Hi, Pastor David Tart here with another, trying to get to behind the words for Sunday. What's going to be the words that will be read from the Bible on this coming Sunday, October 20th. Pastor Peter Logan will be preaching. So we're really looking to how he is going to be dealing with the Holy Spirit as the Holy Spirit leads him to speak a word to us. Objective of this video is just kind of help you understand the power, really, the significance of what we read. A lot of times the Bible is very strange to people, and so people ignore it or don't really understand it, so they don't really let it speak to them. So what I'm going to do as a pastor, someone who's been to college and seminary, is just to try to help you understand um, what's behind these texts so that you'll enjoy it, get something out of it. Our first reading is Isaiah 53. As our introduction says, this is the last of four passages in Isaiah. Isaiah is in the Old Testament. Isaiah was a prophet. And they're often called the servant songs. I won't get into all the historical background of Isaiah, other than to say that there's part of Isaiah that was written at a very difficult, painful time in the people of God's history. They were in exile. They were suffering horribly. Things were really, really bad. And Isaiah, led by the Holy Spirit, inspired by God, comes up with this wonderful, fantastic image of a suffering servant. A servant who comes from God, who bears all this pain and iniquity away. Often these servant songs are read around Christmas. They're especially read around Holy Week and Good Friday, all those religious days that talk about the cross of Christ. I mean, it's how we've often understood Jesus. And why is that? It's because Isaiah has this wonderful, 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 inspired by God, idea that God has not abandoned us, even though things are terrible and horrible and just so hard to deal with. God has not abandoned us because God is sending a servant who will bear all this away. The image, I think, that is kind of behind all the servant songs is that of a sponge. We use a sponge. We sop up all the stain, all the dirt, and we wipe it all clean because it absorbs, it takes away all the dirt and mess. For Isaiah, this servant comes as a sponge to absorb all the mess that the world has in it. Most of it created by human beings, but there are things like diseases and things that happen to us, accidents. Well, Jesus comes to absorb that, take it away, liberate us from that pain and misery. And that's what the cross is. And then other people say, well, the servant, and it's a great image too, that servant in Isaiah is really God absorbing all the anger and doubt and hatred that people have about God. Why didn't you make a perfect world? Why didn't you make everything better? And it's like the servant says, okay, go ahead, beat me up. Go ahead, release all that anger, release all that guilt. God knows you don't understand. So God sort of takes the pain and misery by absorbing it, by taking it on. And that's what Isaiah 53 really gets at. It really kind of lifts up just how deep the servant goes to absorb the things that destroy us, hurt us, make life miserable for us. And of course, that is how we understand Jesus. And especially when we get into Hebrews reading, Jesus is the one. The cross, in particular, is the sponge that absorbs everything. It's really a beautiful reading. Again, we often read this and at Easter or Holy Week, and even Christmas, trying to understand who Jesus is. The servant song is a key definition of Jesus. But we also have Psalm 91, and we have this verse, in verse 9, you have made the Lord your refuge and the Most High of your habitation. The psalmist, it's really one of those great psalms in which, when we're going through hard times, it really calls us to find our safety and refuge in our faith in God who cares for us. And it's really a powerful psalm. It has some really great lines in it that we're going to share. You know, the Psalms were written out of the very depth of human existence. I mean, some of them are extremely happy, rejoiceful, but then there's others which are sad and tragic. I mean, some that are angry. But it's really, this psalm is just really speaks highly, powerfully about how God can be a refuge for us in times of trouble. Psalm 91. Read the whole psalm, but we'll read that on Sunday. It's going to be a great read. Looking forward to it. And we're continuing our wonderful journey through Hebrews. Like I said last week, we're going to be in Hebrews until the end of November. We're going to just absolutely pick it apart. And one of the images of Hebrews that's really kind of very cool is Hebrews has this image of God as high priest. It's somewhat related to the suffering servant image in Isaiah, but it's really more about worship. You know, the priest, what is a priest? A priest is someone who represents humanity, God, and also represents God to humanity. I mean, that's what a priest is. And that God is seen in the priest, experienced through the priest, and the priest presents all this humanity to God. It becomes like a contact, a bridge, or whatever you want to say. That's the role of the priest. And so what Hebrews does, which is powerful, he says, you want to understand Jesus, okay? You want to know who Jesus is? Well, I tell you what, if you look at Jesus, you're going to find God. Just like Jesus is the high priest. He's the top one. He's the one we go to when we want to see God. You know, one theologian said, you know, Jesus is the human face of God. That's what we believe. That when we read the scriptures, when we hear it preached, we are feeling like we are finding the human face of God. But it also, and this is what's great about this Hebrew thing, Hebrew guy says, you know, it's not just, you know, us seeing the human face of God, but it's also God seeing the humanity that we all share. Jesus shares completely, fully in our humanity. And what makes, this is Hebrews, basic Hebrews here, what makes Jesus so incredible is that he didn't have to do this, but he chose to bear our humanity with all of its mess and confusion and doubts and struggles. Jesus bore our humanity. So God, the creator of all things, gets us. Martin Luther, this is classic Martin Luther. Martin Luther said that when God looks at you or me, God doesn't see our sinfulness. God doesn't see our broken humanity. God sees Jesus dying for us. It's beautiful, right? Beautiful that the grace that God gives us by seeing our humanity in Jesus, who humbles himself to bear our brokenness. Wonderful stuff. Great stuff. Again, we got a lot more to say about Hebrews. We got a long way to go. But that's a beautiful image, and I hope you'll cherish it. I really hope you cherish it. Because a lot of people wonder who really Jesus is. Well, he's the priest, the high priest. He's representing you to God. And God is representing God's self to you in Jesus. Cool, isn't it? All right. Then we get into John 10. Now, Mark 10, excuse me. Again, we're reading Mark. And everybody knows I love Mark. Mark's like wonderful. And what I really am kind of envious of Pastor Logan is that he gets to preach on Mark 10, 45. And I consider Mark 10:45 the key verse in the whole Gospel of Mark. And I'm not going to pack that whole thing away, just get right to the point, because the very end of this reading, he says, remember, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. I mean, this is Mark. And we've been talking about servanthood and service. Last shall be first, first shall be last, and all that sort of thing. Becoming like a child. I mean, all that's been like we've been just kind of working all around in that. But now we're going to be going, a little bit more profound to really kernel stuff, the center stuff of Mark, of understanding who Jesus is and what did he do. He came not to be served, but to serve. He walks the talk. He shows us a God who's not interested in us serving him. He's more interested in serving us. God sees our brokenness, our need, our pain, our misery, and comes in Jesus to serve us, to become the slave, become the washer of feet. Why? Because he's trying to ransom us. What is he ransoming us out of? There's a long list. Ransom us away from death. Ransom us away from illness and sickness. Ransom us away from suffering. Ransom us away from hatred. Ransom us away from greed. Ransom us away from the lust for power and lust for money and all those things that just absolutely destroy the human person. He's trying to pay us out of there, free us, liberate us. How? Not only by completely unconditionally loving us, by becoming servant to us, but also by lifting us up. By lifting us up so that we don't have to live that way anymore. We don't have to live with shame and guilt anymore. We don't have to live with self-hatred anymore. We don't have to live by trying to always get on top anymore, by being the best. We don't have to live that way. We can live through service and find the joy of giving to each other. It's going to be a great Sunday, and I hope, and I really do hope, that you'll log on Sunday morning or Sunday evening with Pastor Goodson and just embrace these wonderful readings. We won't get to read them for another 3 years. I mean, this is it. This is your shot. So anyway, I hope you'll come and just kind of enjoy what we're doing here, this wonderful way in which we connect to each other, and we connect to the God, and we connect to the Word, we connect to the earth, we connect. We We experience what it means to be together with no questions asked. You don't even have to show your face. You don't even have to say anything. Just having your name on that Zoom is powerful. And again, like I've said ad nauseum, Toward the Dawn is incarnational theology. We believe that the word that we're going to read on Sunday belongs in your life. It belongs in your home. It belongs in your work. It belongs in your neighborhood. It belongs where you live. Why? Because that word gives life. It buys us out. It ransoms us. And we're able to be so resilient and hopeful and joyful and peaceful because that's what the word does. Anyway, look forward to seeing you. God bless you on your week. Hope you enjoy these wonderful words. Read them, study them, and then on Sunday morning, we're going to just celebrate them. Bury ourselves right one more time in them. So anyway, God bless, and I look forward to seeing you on Sunday.